Welcome to my Toyota 200 Series touring build. Welcome to episode 2 of my Toyota Landcruiser 200 Series touring rig rundown. And today I want to talk to you about my electrical setup in the car. Now, I'll preface this video first by saying what I'm about to show you is by no means the best or the cleanest way of doing an electrical setup in your car. It's just what I've chosen to do for me that suits my needs. At the end of the video, if you hang around, I'll talk about what I would actually do differently if I could start again. I think it's nearly blasphemous these days to talk about your aftermarket electrical setup in your touring rig as a 12-volt setup, because things have advanced so much in the last few years. I mean, let's be honest, most blokes stand around the campfire at night these days talking about how big their batteries are. But that shouldn't deter anyone, because there's a way to set up your vehicle for 12 volt that will suit any budget and suit everyone's needs. I've owned my Landcruiser for 6 years now, and over that time I've had 3 different iterations of electrical systems in my car. I started first with just a simple battery isolator and a very cheap AGM battery that was under the bonnet. And that cheap and simple setup actually lasted me the longest at 3.5 years long. After time, I kind of got sick and tired of putting the fridge in and out of the back of the car when I wanted to go away camping, and convinced the missus to let me leave it in the back of the car full time plugged in and running. This kind of showed a bit of a weakness in my first system, as we just didn't drive the car enough to charge the second battery up. So around came iteration 2 of my electrical setup. So this second iteration of my electrical setup was meant to last me forever. It consisted of a pretty expensive DC to DC charger and a very expensive under the bonnet AGM battery, as well as a solar panel on the roof so that the battery would stay charged even if we didn't drive the car. Now, unfortunately, as we all know in the four-wheel drive world, enough is never enough. And I quickly decided to throw a Road Chef oven in the back of the car and a 600 watt inverter. And that really showed some more weaknesses in the second iteration of my system. So welcome to the electric car revolution. Not really, I haven't electrified the motor in my car, but it really feels like I've turned my car into an electrical powerhouse. As we all know, Tesla are by far leading the pack when it comes to electric vehicles, and their battery of choice is a lithium iron phosphate battery, or as we most commonly know it, a LiFePO4. And that's the exact same type of battery cell that I've decided to put into my 200 Series Landcruiser. So completely gone is the AGM battery in my car. And to go even a step further, I've also removed the lead acid starter battery that was in the car, and I've replaced both batteries with LiFePO4 batteries from Deep Cycle Systems. Now, I'm not going to go into details today in this video about the differences between lithium and between AGM and lead acid. I'll leave that for the professionals to take care of, but I will discuss with you the reasons why I've chosen this setup. Firstly, the Deep Cycle Systems lithium batteries come with a 4-year warranty, and it's an Australian-owned company. And they also warrant these batteries for use under the bonnet in my 200 Series. So that ticks a lot of boxes right off the bat. Nextly, DCS have done an amazing job with their prototyping, and they do all their R&D here in Australia. So I know that the batteries have been designed to withstand the harsh environments that Australia has to throw at them. So with my previous battery setup, I had about 60 amp hours of usable power. Whereas now with my lithium setup, I have 180 amp hours of usable power at any time. That's an insane amount, it's 3 times what I had before. But the next best thing is that I've saved a heap of weight. You see, the lithium batteries from Deep Cycle Systems are about half the weight of the heavier lead acid and AGM batteries. So I've saved over 35 kilograms of weight out of my car. How good is that? Now that's not even the best thing. You see, the Deep Cycle Systems batteries do not need a DC to DC charger when you put them in a 200 Series Landcruiser. They can connect directly to the car's alternator. This means I'm no longer limited to the DC to DC charger's amperage output, and I'm only limited by what the alternator can output. And I've seen these batteries take as much as 76 amps of charge each at a time. That's insane. It means that after about an hour and 10 minutes of driving, from dead flat, I can recharge my batteries to 100% of power. That's something that you've never heard of before. I mean, previously with my AGM battery, it would take me about 4.5 to 5 hours driving to get from 0 to full, which again is only 60 amp hours of power. Now, I drive for an hour and 10 minutes and I get 180 amp hours of usable power. So some quick questions that everyone's probably wondering by now. One, do the lithium batteries have enough power to start my car? And the answer is yes. They actually have more than enough power to start the car, and the car starts quicker than it ever has before. Secondly, can I use the winch with these batteries? Short answer is yes. I actually can use these batteries to power the winch even when the car's not running in short 15-second stints. They have that much power to output. There's a video that I'm going to link in the description from Deep Cycle Systems that actually goes through this process. Thirdly, what happens if I run my batteries flat and can't start my car? Well, that's not something to worry about if you choose to go with this Deep Cycle Systems setup. You see, part of the setup is a Victron Smart Battery Protect Unit, which is programmed digitally and sits under the bonnet of the car. You see, Deep Cycle Systems have done their research on the 200 series Landcruiser, and they have worked out that it takes about 6 amp hours of power to start the car in the morning. So, by leaving 20 amp hours of power left in the batteries at all times, it means that the car is able to turn over 3 times with no charge going into the batteries at all. So this is something that you don't have to worry about. So this isn't a paid or sponsored video either. I've just chosen this system after a lot of research into what works, and I think that the Deep Cycle Systems lithium setup is one of the best on the market. So to keep my power going, I've decided to leave my 160-watt solar panel on the roof. And rather than have that connected to a DC to DC charger, which isn't required anymore, I purchased a Victron Smart Solar Unit, which can handle 20 amps of current going through it. Now that Victron unit is located in the back on the side of my drawers. And a lot of people are going to say you should have that unit as close to your batteries as possible. Well, in my case, to be honest, the back of the car is probably the closest place because the Victron unit isn't weather sealed and can't go under the bonnet, and there's nowhere underneath my dash to put it. So the back of the car it is. So what do I actually power with these batteries? Well, to the back of my car, I've run 3 main circuits or 3 main cables. The first cable runs my ARB twin air compressor, which is mounted under the wing of the car. The second cable runs my 600-watt power inverter that's mounted to the side of my drawers, and my third cable runs my accessories. I have that circuit running to a fuse block that is behind the wing of the car, and then all of my accessories, such as my fridge, my oven, my camp lights, any charge points that I have, run to that fuse block. It's actually quite funny because at the back of my car, I've got a visual representation of the 3 different electrical setups that I've gone through with my car. You see, the first time around, I put a small battery voltage gauge over here on the side of the car. And that just tells me what voltage my batteries are at, and I thought that that was awesome. But the second setup, I decided to step up my game. And I got a BM1 battery monitor that tells me my incoming amps, my outgoing amps, my state of charge, and what percentage my batteries are at. And this is pretty good even till today. For the current setup, I don't need a physical battery monitor. You see, the lithium Deep Cycle Systems batteries are Bluetooth enabled. So as long as you have a smartphone handy, you can connect to the battery bank and see exactly what the batteries are doing, what percentage of charge they're at, if they're getting any solar input, what amperage they're letting out. It's a very awesome system. So what about real world use so far? Because not many video reviews actually talk about that. Well, with my AGM battery setup, leaving my fridge running just overnight, my batteries would drop to about 75% of power. With the new lithium setup, the most I've seen them drop to is 97% of power. So I'm only using 3% of the battery bank overnight to run my fridge. And the next day, within about 2 hours, my solar panel connected to the Victron MPPT Smart Solar Regulator has those batteries back at 100%. Previously, with that same solar panel plugged into my DC to DC charger, to charge up after overnight use would take about 5 or 6 hours of direct sunlight. So I've had a massive improvement. Another great thing with this system is I no longer have what I like to call ignition anxiety. You know what I mean when you have the car turned off but you've got your ignition turned on, you might have the stereo pumping at camp, you've got phones charging, or you might pull up at night and have your lights turned on just so you can see what you're doing setting up camp. Well, with this system, my 180 amp hours of battery bank is connected to the entire electrical system in the vehicle. This means I don't have ignition anxiety anymore. The other night, to prove a point to myself, I hopped in my car, I put YouTube up on my screen in the car, and sat there watching it for 45 minutes. And that was the same night that I checked the battery usage the next morning, and it was only down to 97%. So I had my ignition on for 45 minutes, and I had my fridge running all night, and I only used 3% of power. That's crazy. So while all this sounds really good, the big question that I'm sure everyone's wondering is, would I change anything if I could? And the answer to that is yes, I definitely would. You see, I'd get rid of the second iteration of system that I went and wait and save more money up and go for a lithium setup. And I think there's a lot of people that will be in the same boat. Now, I can understand the need for a cheap, simple setup when you first start. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, that cheap, simple system lasted me the longest of any of my systems so far. But when it came time to do my second iteration of system, I would stop, I would wait 6 months, I would save the extra money up, and I would go straight to a lithium setup. Because it has been life-changing, or camp-changing, or forward drive or touring changing, to say the least. It's an amazing system that I think everyone should look at getting. I would also change the way that my circuits are run and the way that under the bonnet has been done. You see, because I've gone through multiple iterations and because I've slowly added things over time, there are lots of cables, there are lots of things running everywhere. If I could start again from complete scratch and run a battery in the back of my car and have a dedicated fuse block and terminal for every single circuit, I think that's the ultimate way to go. But in saying all of that, this system that I have and the way that it's set up suits me. And I think that that's the most important thing when it comes to modifying your four-wheel drive or your touring rig. You need a system that suits you and that you're happy with. And this suits me perfectly. So I hope you all got some handy tips out of this video. If you have any tips for me or questions, please throw them down in the comments below. And remember, this is only one part of my 9-part series on my touring build on my 200 series Landcruiser. So please, if you want to follow along, hit the subscribe button below and click the bell next to it so you're notified every time a new video comes on. Thanks, guys.